Hello, my name is Leslie Halseth, and I'm here to talk about Breitenbush Hot Springs, Breitenbush Mineral Springs, and Breitenbush in general as I remember it. My parents are Wendell and Marie Halseth, and I have three brothers, older, Jerry, Tim, and Mike.
And how did you become the family genealogist?
My mother, she was interested in the family history, and we wanted to research together. And we did start list while we were at Breitenbush, but it came later in the 1970s, and that's when I started writing to my grandma Burl Halseth and Anna Lura Holt and then from them I got other names of older family members, because when you were working on genealogy, then it was all done by mail or you went to the historical societies. So that's how that began, and then later with the internet, then I mentioned that it just snowballed. I mean, you could just learn a lot that way. But it was sweet to be able to write letters and write back to family members and just start that history going.
And specifically, how, or when, or how did you start researching Breitenbush history?
That came later. When we were first there, you know, I had a little box camera and I'd take pictures of things around the resorts, the horse corrals, swimming pool, and just playing with my friends. And then, let's see, what was that? Oh, the memorabilia. So in the grocery store, Dad had little trinkets and things like that, and I still have today my bracelet that spelled out Breitenbush Hot Springs, the letters spelled out, and I still have that bracelet. So, and the brochures, I collected all the brochures from when I found them in the earlier days, and then later the ones that we made, and so I have all those brochures. And then I just started researching newspaper articles and gathered information from the land records and all the historical societies in Portland and in Salem. So just gathering information, and it's an interesting history, but there's still more to learn.
So did the Halseths go to Breitenbush before it was purchased in the mid-50s?
Yes, I've since learned that they did, probably in 1949, 1950 is when they started going up there, and like everyone else, picnicking and just looking over the resort.
And do you have your first memories of when you were at Breitenbush?
My first memories, well, I was 2 years old, and I have a picture where my brothers and I and some other friends are sitting on a rock, and I think that's at Breitenbush. But my first official memory is in 1955, the real deal.
So it was your father's brothers Wayne who purchased the lower resort first in 1955, and in fact you overwintered the winter of 55 up there, 55, 56.
Yes, 55, I remember that for sure. And then 56 is when we went to the upper resort, Wendell Halseth family, and then Wayne stayed at the lower resort.
And was there a cabin that burned? You were living in a cabin at first at the lower resort?
Yes, there was a cabin that we were in, my parents and my brothers and I, and we had started school at Detroit, and so we were there, and then winter set in, and then we were snowed in. So that was hard to get to school, so we just stayed at the resort, and Dad was our teacher. And then we had homework from the school. Our parents made arrangements with the school, and then our homework was turned in.
So after the cabin burned, you lived in the lower hotel?
Right, exactly, yeah. When the fire happened, we weren't there at the time, and then we were notified and went back, and it burnt to the ground. Everything that was in it, and thank goodness nothing else burnt but that.
So the Breitenbush at that time, well, even now, is 10 miles from Detroit and off the grid, but you had a powerhouse, and sometimes the electricity would start to fade. And tell me what you had to do then.
Okay, yes, between my brothers and I, and there was snow on the ground then, but we would take turns to walk down to the powerhouse. It was a lovely walk down the horseshoe area of the driveway there, and then walk over to the powerhouse. And you had to, what was called raking the leaves, but the flume coming to the powerhouse, leaves would fall in there, little branches, or big branches maybe, but I remember the leaves because they would stop against the screen, and then there's no flow of water to make the powerhouse function. So the lights would dim, and we'd take the rake and rake the leaves out. And it took several times because more leaves were coming along. But once you were done with that, hung the rake back up, walked back up to the cabin that we were in, and or the lodge, then the lights would brighten again. Because they would just get really dim because there was no force to work the pump. So once that was done, then we had lights. We had power.
So in '56, the Halseth bought the upper resort from Merle Bruckman. And do you remember the Bruckmans at all?
I do remember Merle Bruckman because I followed Dad everywhere, so he was chatting with Bruckman. I don't remember what they talked about, but I do remember him. A big man, really nice man. So I do remember that. But
And-
no other relatives. I don't remember meeting any daughters or anybody else.
Right. So shortly after the Halseth bought the upper resort, they constructed what they called the general headquarters. And can you tell me about that series of storefronts?
Right, because from what I remember, yes, the series of the cabins that are there, the main store was in the middle, and then there was an art shop, and then the post office and office where you would come in and make a reservation for a cabin, or that was done by mail too. And then on the other side was a barber shop, and then the soda shop.
Right.
So they were all grand, and the art shop was for a local artist, and we had artists coming in from other places. Fritz Wertz was from Nevada, and he was a famous watercolor artist and beautiful art. And he came there, and then my mom operated the cabin post office. It wasn't a U.S. post office at that time. Merle Bruckman was the only postmaster there in 1928 to 1953, and then of course we went there in '56. But Mom had stamps to sell to people because we sold postcards in the grocery store, or probably even in the post or the office there. So that you wanted to send a postcard out, and there's a lot of historical ones out there and floating around that are really nice to read their stories of that time period. But definitely the postal driver would come to the lower resort first, and he would deliver mail to Aunt Lillian, and then he would drive on up to the upper resort and get mail from Mom, or he was delivering mail also, but he was also picking up our mail to go back to the U.S. Post Office in Detroit, Oregon. That's where it went to. But I loved my Aunt Lillian's story about when the postal driver came to the lower resort. She would open that mail and answer those letters and reserve those, make those reservations for the people that just couldn't wait to get there. So I really loved her story. Mm-hmm. So as the postal driver is heading back, he would stop there and pick up the mail at the lower resort, and on he'd go. Mm-hmm. So, and then the grocery store was great. It had candy, cigarettes, beer, food, canned goods. memorabilia if you wanted a Breitenbush bracelet like I had. And then the barber shop. My grandpa Albert was a barber, and Wendell also learned to cut hair. And so the barber shop, really nice old-fashioned chair in there to sit in, so you could get your hair cut. And then the soda fountain, there was hamburgers, french fries, milkshakes. I would go out and pick huckleberries and come back, and whoever was working the soda shop would make me a milkshake with those huckleberries. So that was really nice. So it was a nice storefront there, the headquarters. And it was an important part of that resort at that time, because you stopped there, and then from there you went to your cabin and all around to the campgrounds, the lodge, your summer home cabin, the Villa Maria Chapel. So it was just that stop right after you came up over the hill from the lower resort.
So where did the family live when you lived at the upper resort?
My parents there was a room behind the cabin post office, so they had a room behind there, and that way they were close to the main function of it all, and that's important to have someone there, so people don't kind of come in freely. So they were there, and I was at the upstairs of the lodge, kind of over where the kitchen was, so I was pretty safe up there. And then my brothers were in the F1 row cabin, the first cabin. So they were there.
Now, Bruckman named the cabins A through F row, whatever, but your family had alternate names for those?
Right. In addition to that, and what everybody knew for those years coming to Breitenbush, they knew what row they wanted to stay in. But Mom and Dad were creative, and I know my brothers participated in naming those different rows. And that was made out of a piece of wood, and then they painted the name on there and just tacked it up on the tree there. So the E row ended up being Maple Way, and all the other ones are gone now. They probably broke or fell down or something. Firewood.
So did you stay year-round, or was it a seasonal operation, or have a caretaker?
It was seasonal for us once we were at the upper resort. So we were there the 3 or 4 months, whatever it took to get ready for the summer folks that were coming up there, vacationers. And then in the winter, there was Eric Peterson, and of course he was a part of the lower resort too. And Wayne and Lillian took care of him as he got older. Yeah.
And he lived at what they call the Mansfield cabin?
Right. I do remember him living there at the upper lodge, the lodge just to the left and set back. And you could overlook down the hill and see the pool, so that gives you an idea where that cabin is. And it was built by Claude Mansfield, and then Eric Peterson lived in that cabin. And I remember him very well. I liked him a lot. He was really nice to me. He'd give me coins once in a while so I could buy candy. That was nice. But I liked him. He had a wonderful accent, and it was really great to know him. Yeah.
So the whole Halseth family had jobs at the resort to do. It was a working family operation. And what jobs were you assigned?
Okay. I did help Mom, and I would, if she had something that she wanted me to take up to Grandma Holt at the upper lodge, where she took reservations up there. So I kind of was like a gopher. I would do those things. We were always picking up trash, because it's just something that you do. When something's on the ground, you pick it up and put it in the trash. And sometimes people lose things like their keys or whatever, so we'd bring those down to the main office there, or even maybe it was in the grocery store, so that people could know they could come and look for something if it was found. So that was good. Then I helped my grandpa Halseth in the laundromat, and of course that's gone now from the flood, but it was a large building, and it was just amazing. It had the big tumblers for doing the laundry. We had sheets and towels. And then there was a spinner, I remember that. That also spun, but there was an additional spinner to get all the water out. And then we would hang them up on the power lines, which is out the front door, a little walk down to the sandy beach there. And if you're standing there where the sheets are hung, you could look downstream and see Wayne and Lillian's footbridge and part of the bathhouse. You could see the steam coming up down there. And then looking backwards, the steam up on the hill from the other hot springs was really nice. But then the sheets had to be brought in and folded and just stored away for use. And that was mainly for the lodge, but I think the A-row cabins may have used those too. And possibly the O-row cabins, because those were bigger cabins. So there was always work to be done. Wash to be done. Yeah.
So did you have summer help, and did they come back year to year?
Yes, summer help we had. And there was many of them. My brother Mike worked the pool. Tim was a lifeguard. Jerry did a lot of maintenance work along with Grandpa Holt, and there were a lot of young kids. My brothers all met their wives there, future wives that is, and two of them were vacationers with their families, but my sister-in-law Norma worked there, but there was other friends or classmates. Norma's friend Pam, and then there was an older couple that worked there, the Hendersons, and they did a lot of odd jobs. And we had a masseuse and a masseur at the bathhouse, so they had that wonderful job, you know, helping people in and out of the tubs and getting massages.
Do you have, could you tell me a little more about the bathhouse operations, or the pool and bathhouse operations?
Yeah, the pool, it was always full, and, you know, morning until, I don't remember the exact time. It wasn't nighttime when it closed, but it was, you know, a long day. And then we had more than one lifeguard. We had two, sometimes three. So that's a big pool. It's 100 by 40, Olympic size, and we all learned to swim there, especially me. And I had an incident where I was first in the pool, you know, 7 years old, and I was in an inner tube and I slipped out. I don't know how that happened, but there was someone there right away to save me. So I can attest to that they knew what they were doing. And I know it was a woman, I don't remember, it wasn't Tim or Brenda, but it was another woman, because she was at the shallow end where, you know, watching. So I don't remember of any incident of any injuries there, you know, any drownings or anything, but they did, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one that slipped out of an inner tube.
Well, I did see some articles about lawsuits. People slipped or hurt themselves.
Yeah, that's quite possible. I tell you, the swimming pool was well taken care of by the lifeguards. I know that for sure. Yeah, there was several lawsuits, and generally it was when someone stepped in the hot springs and maybe they were a little tipsy or just not paying attention, because everything had a sign there, you know, this hot, be careful. And so, or people would maybe slip on the bank, that they, you know, slipped on a rock or something while fishing. But I just remember one lawsuit where someone stepped in the hot springs and it turned out okay. However, I injured myself. I fell off the Upper Resort footbridge because I was playing on there on the outside, hanging on. I let go, and where are you going to go? Gravity took me to the bank, and I broke my wrist. But I want to tell you, I screamed so loud, all the fishermen up and downstream heard me, because I heard the stories later. And my dad even heard me, and he was up at the powerhouse. So he ran down and got me. Our masseuse, she helped me with a board. She put that under my arm and wrapped it loosely with the towel. And then Dad took me to Sublimity Hospital. And so that was quite a wild drive, because not everybody can go, there's work to be done. But Dad drove me to Sublimity, and then I was there for a couple of weeks. They kept you longer back then in the 50s. Now you're in and out of the hospital anymore. They want to get you going. But I couldn't swim or ride horses then after that, because that was early summer.
Right.
So I think I kind of hung out with my grandma up in the upper lodge by the kitchen. So I was there. But I don't remember too many other injuries or lawsuits. One for sure.
So was there a phone system at the upper resort or upper lower?
Yeah, the phone service, the phone was a by wire, but it was with the old-fashioned crank phone. So there were codes for those, maybe a long and a short, or two shorts and a long, or whatever. But everybody knew what they were because each phone had a little guide. This is how you call Wayne and Lillian, and this one's Grandma up at the lodge, and then there was one to the to the laundry facility, and then the main post office here in the general headquarters. So yes, that's the only one that we ever had. I think later in time then there was a handheld phone that could be purchased, but we never had that. We just had that. Or you got in the car and drove somewhere to talk to somebody. Yeah.
So nowadays there's a 180-degree pool that's fenced off across from the lodge. And was that there during the Halseth years?
Yes, we were just talking about that, and it was there. I remember it. It didn't have a fence around it like it does now, but it definitely had a huge sign there. And I want to look into the name of it because I don't remember. All the other ones have names to them that are, labeled on into the stonework. So, but that one was there. A recent picture that I looked at, it's much bigger now, and it has a nice fence around it to protect people. That's good.
Right.
And a boardwalk, but it was always there.
So were there special times of year, like holidays, that were the busiest?
Well, since we were seasonal, then you have the 4th of July, and then of course the holidays for us was every day was a holiday, and we had dances every weekend. So Wendell, and the band that he was in, the Julius Moen Trio, they were the band. And Saturday and Sunday nights, and we had bonfires and dances, and it was good times. Dad put on talent shows. He would go around and ask people, "Hey, what do you do?" And somebody sang or danced or hula hoop, all kinds of fun things. So it was fun to watch. It was fun to participate, and we had a grand time. And so there was always fun things going on musically. There were other things to do too besides that. I mentioned the 4th of July. I don't remember fireworks, but I'm sure that there was a big party, in the evening time. And, you could be maybe sitting down at the foot bath or down by the pool. Maybe you were just walking around on the trails. So there was a lot of fun things to do.
So did visitors go to other places around the resort, like hiking or horseback riding?
Exactly. I'm forgetting the first person that came up with horses, but the shepherds came up with their horses then the next 5 or 6 years that I remember. And I rode on all the trails that were available, when they the horses were available for the general public, but as kids of the resort, then we got to ride too. And Monty would be the trail guide. That was their oldest son, the shepherd's son. So there were trail from the corral, which was just down from the general headquarters to the left. There was a trail that went up to the power line, and then there was another trail that went up the bridge around up into the upper area. I want to say where the garbage dump ground was, but they didn't go there, but it was up in that area. And then there was a gorge trail ride, and I did that once, and most of the time I would hike it, but that was a beautiful ride. So people did that, and there are many trails to hike and many lakes to walk to, and then just general relaxing, fishing, having a picnic, looking at the wildflowers, and of course enjoying the pool and the bathhouse. And that's what people really came up there for, was to relax. But when you have a family and kids, then there were things for them to do too.
Do you know if people hiked or horseback rode up to Lake Leon?
I believe they did. I don't remember riding horseback up there, but I believe I walked up there. I went to O'Lally Lake and Breitenbush Lake, Leon Lake, and there was just a lot of great lakes to hike to. Elk Lake, and Breitenbush Lake, yeah.
Did Native Americans or certain ethnic groups ever specifically come out to Breitenbush?
I believe that they did. I don't really remember it. For me personally, the ethnicity, but I do know that people came from all over, all over, actually the world, and then, Oregon, California, Washington, and so there was a mix of people. Yes, yes.
So do you have any particular vivid memories or stories to tell? I guess breaking your arm was a vivid memory.
Yes, that was very vivid. I just remember enjoying the resort myself. I mean, I was barefoot most of the time, and so I enjoyed my feet on the ground. But riding horses, swimming was a really big thing for me. That's where I learned to swim. And then I also swam in the river, and a lot of good memories. Meeting people. When the families came up, I got to know the kids, people from Portland, Salem, so I met a lot of nice friends. Some of them had summer homes, and then the Villa Maria Chapel, I would go there on Sundays. Yes. And pray. Yes. But I met Father Neugebauer was the priest from Sublimity, Oregon, and he was a nice person. And we, in the evenings when things had settled down, and he would invite the family up there and other people that worked there. So he would roast corn, roast ears of corn, and we'd have food, and it was really nice. He had a great big hammock there. That's the thing I remember, because that was fun for me as a child, sitting in the big hammock. But it was a large building. It was huge, right along the creek there. So, yes. And
did you have friends at the summer homes or interact with those folks at all?
Yes. I was really good friends with the Adams, and their daughter Beverly and I were really good friends. And so we hiked. We did the things that you do at a resort. We hiked and, swam, went to the pool, and, just had a great time. I had another really good friend, Rhonda, and her sister Christy, the Marstons, from Portland. And Rhonda and I got a jar, and we wrote a little note, like for the future. I can't think of what you call those when you bury a capsule.
Time capsule.
Time capsule. That was our time capsule, and it's probably still there. I know where the area is. It's kind of, I'll give you a hint, it's where the A through F row cabins, and then there's all the camping area there, and there was, in the center, there was these vine maples that crossed each other. And so we bury it in the center of that. And I'm thinking it's still there. We probably put a little piece of jewelry in there, but we just wrote down the year and our names. So maybe it's still there.
So And on October 12th, 62 was the Columbus Day storm. That would have been after the season had largely closed for the year.
Right.
But do you know how that affected the resort, or what was going on there?
Yeah, until we went back up there, probably in spring. I don't think that it was bad as some storms, but I know there was debris, and I think that could have been the year that we had to clean out the pool because it was full of rock and gravel, and that had to be cleaned out of there. But there were always branches. Possibly that we probably had to replace the log across the river that created the dam to back up the water for the flume to the powerhouse. So I'm pretty sure that had to be done, because that's what happens when there's a flood. It washes out the dams, you know. So, but I know it was operational at the end of that time. Did you say 64?
62.
62.
October 62.
Thank you.
Yeah.
64 just jumped out at me. I don't know why. We weren't
Right.
there then. Okay.
Now, the Halseth sold in August 63. There's an article to Harold Wright and George Young. Tell me why, what was going on with the Halseth family that it was time to sell?
That's a good question. I think that it was just there were opportunities that came from that, and Wright and Young must have came to look at the resort, and they had the Sunset Trout Farm, and my parents just made that transition. And I think I mentioned earlier in this video that my brothers had already gone on with their lives in the military and raising families. My oldest brother raising his family. So, and then I was just in high school. We were just transitioning from Dallas to the Sunset Trout Farm, and without my brothers there anymore, because they were the main force. That doesn't mean you can't hire someone else, but generally your family works for not as, the wages would have been low, or nothing maybe. I don't remember getting paid, but I was little, so that was okay. I was taken care of.
So the Halseth years there from 56 to 63, the family worked hard, it was profitable, and you had a good relationship with Merle Bruckman during that time?
Yes, that's true, and that's what I understand. And it was good, because when the minute the resorts opened up, they were busy, and until the end of the season. And we all worked hard, and I know Dad got along with Merle Bruckman, and they understood each other, really well. And we took care of business, and always have. So my parents worked hard, and they've always had, after they left there, they had profitable businesses. Besides the Sunset Trout Farm, then they had the Zigzag Mountain Store, and that one was profitable too for them. So they always worked hard and took care of business. Yeah.
So it was after the Halseth sold that there was a devastating Christmas 1964 flood, and so the family wasn't there anymore.
No.
But my understanding is that was a devastating flood for Breitenbush.
Yeah, that's my same understanding too. It was horrendous. The flood waters were so high it took out, I think, the bathhouse at the upper resort, the laundromat, and surely the pool was full to the top with debris. It even altered the river. It's different today even. I mean, it's functioning as a river, but it altered, especially as it came around the corner, and then it just devastated the lower resort. And but my Uncle Wayne put it back together. He's a hardworking man, and he got his operating again. So, and they went on for a number of years from there. But I know it was devastating. Yeah.
Right. The lower resort, upper resort was sold in 63, but the lower resort was from 55 to, I think it was 77.
Yeah,
And
77 or 78.
Yeah.
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 So that storm for them, my Uncle Wayne and Aunt Lillian and their family, it was really hard
Right.
but they put things back together.
So have you been back since the resorts were sold?
Um, just in 2000 and 2001, and I just, excuse me, let me back up. 1970, I went up there, and and I found a picture today. I was looking through my stuff before coming over here, and the pool was open in 1970. I had one where it looked like it was empty, but I found another one where I was on the north end of the pool taking a picture, and the pool was full. There was no bathhouse or no trees around it. It was just the pool.
Right.
So whoever had it at that time, it was people were in the pool, or at least laying out around the pool. So that was in 1970, and that was just a short visit. I didn't get down to the lower resort. My husband George and I were with another couple, and we were going to go to another lake, but we just popped in there to the upper resort because I wanted to show George around. And then later, 2000, I went up there to find the upper resort. I went around the east and came in like over the mountain, Mount Hood, and came in past Olallie Lake
Right.
to Breitenbush, and couldn't get down the hill because it was gated off. I didn't realize that, because I wasn't paying attention to how it was open, so that was closed. And then we found another way to come in, how people go to Breitenbush now, through the south side. So it was open because there are certain events that go on at certain times, but it was open. So we just walked through, we meaning Tom and I, and then that was nice to see everything, and that they were taking care of it. The new management were, upgrading the hotel and the cabins with heat. That was nice. I could see the pool was empty at that time, and then they have some hot pools down there. But that was the 2000 visit, and then I went back 6 months later because I wanted to find the lower resort, and because I couldn't find it on that first trip. So I did. I went by myself. I wanted to just kind of go on my own little quest, kind of a personal visit. And that's when I discovered that, the cabins were gone, and the bridge, there was the truth behind it, but I actually saw it. And so the foundation is the only thing left at the lower resort, and the footbridge is gone, the powerhouse is gone. There's remnants of equipment on the side of the bank, the wheel, Pelton wheel, I think is what it's called. So that's laying in the side of the river. And then I just walked around the horseshoe, the way you went in and out, and then I kind of walked in between to where the lodge would have been. So, all the buildings are gone, and the tall trees are still there. I wanted to mention that, and the rhododendrons, but all buildings and structures are gone. And so then when I came back to the main road, I kind of walked towards Mansfield's Creek, and there's a gate there, so you can't, that is obviously gated at both ends for the upper resort. So the only way you get in there is through the south side. And what else did I say? The hot springs are still there across the river. The hot spring is steaming away. So that's kind of what is happening. I talked to the U.S. Forest Service via email then because I wanted to know what happened to the cabins, and then was told that two or three or whatever were sold to the upper resort. And then I also wanted to know what happened to the Forest Service guard station past the upper resort. It's like 300 feet uphill from where you start the trailhead to the gorge, so up on the hill there. And he said that, and of course it was written in the news that it was arson. So that was kind of sad. It was a really beautiful building back then. So anyway, that's what I found out in 2001.
Right.
Yeah.
So, do you have any concluding remarks? I think we're about at the end of the interview here.
Oh, okay, thank you. Just wanted to mention that, you know, past, present, and future, Breitenbush is a beautiful place.
Okay.
I'm sorry. And a lot of people to thank. It was a great place to grow up. And I learned a lot about nature. And just, that's all I can think of right now.
Okay.
Just thanks to everybody, and keep going to Breitenbush.
All right.
Keep taking care of it, because it's a beautiful place.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.